Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Hailey Babcock with me. Hailey is the founder of Hailey Happens Fitness. And one of the things that I think you're going to hear about her journey is we can always make an excuse, or we can use that as motivation to accomplish something. So, Hailey, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, so to start your journey, you grew up in Utah, and there was a summer where you traveled to Colorado, though, and that found a new passion for you. So talk about growing up in Utah and then what it was about Colorado that just roped you in.
Well, I was always super active and I thank my dad for that. So I I was always, I think I went to the gym the first time at maybe fifth grade, sixth grade with my dad. And so it was always just in a lot of activities. I ended up being a gymnast, which I had a very late growth spurt. I'm 5'10", so it started to work against me in high school when I started growing and I kind of moved to cheerleading and then anyhow, I was super active. I got married young and started having a few children. And at that time, I kind of just took up running. Well, let me reverse back. Actually, I had back surgery in high school, my
Wow.
senior year, that kind of took me out. I really wanted to cheer or, at least tumble for university. And then I had back surgery my senior year, and that was like dream dead, gone,
Yeah.
go on to something else. So I kind of took up running, when I went to university, and it's probably not the best thing post back surgery, but it was free. It's easy to do. You just go out, all you need is running shoes. So I kind of did that for a while. And then honestly, my husband was working at kind of got into advertising, and there was an agency out in Boulder that had moved from Florida, and it was it was like agency of the decade at the time, and he really wanted to work there, and he ended up getting a job offer, and so we moved to Colorado. And I feel like when you live in Boulder, like you have to own a bike and you
Yeah.
have to do triathlon. And so I kind of got into that world and started, t just testing the waters with small different distance sprint training, like sprint triathlons, and then just, some century rides and different organized group rides there. And then it kind of started to morph into something that became my hobby. And honestly, my husband traveled all the time to LA to produce commercials, and he was a creative director. And I was home all the time with these little kids, and I was like, I need an out. So I hired a coach and started getting really serious for the next decade in this, pretty much 70.3 distance was the one that I landed on that I really liked.
Yeah.
And I was legit. I mean, I was, age group legit, but I was always like top three, any of these Ironman events. And I was super serious. So I pretty much did that for a decade while I was raising my kids. I also was a Pilates instructor at the time. So I kind of was doing that part time, but really just racing. And that's what I wanted to do.
I love it. So I'm going to rewind to the high school surgery, and then we'll come back to a couple of things you mentioned. So I think, at that age and that time, oftentimes people are in a very fragile state because we found something we're really good at, or we've attached our identity to something that usually has nothing to do with us, but it has to do with what we're getting outside praise for. And I would imagine, being a senior in high school with aspirations of, you know cheering or doing something in college and then having this surgery that could completely change where you're at or how you see yourself. So talk a little bit about, if you rewind back to that season or phase of life for you, but just kind of going through that and the navigation that it took to get to the other side.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I would say that was maybe the first real trial that I had had. I was 17. I was the second youngest patient that my surgeon had ever operated on. Um, and so it was not fun. I mean, I remember I have this visual memory of me sitting in my room, and I think like listening to who was the band? REM, like Everybody Hurts, everyone, whatever that song was.
Yeah.
and just like crying. And I was just like, this is it. This is my senior year. I didn't get to do the final, you know um finale, if you will,
Yeah.
of the cheerleaders doing this massive end event. And you know as a gymnast, I had this was my path, and then all of a sudden it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of time to, it was really hard. It was the first time I've had to be like, okay, well, the situation isn't changing
Yep.
and this is happening. So what do I do with it? And how do I just move forward? And that's kind of that was early days of something that, was life changing, but not super life changing. But at the time, at that age, it was very impactful on my life for sure.
Yeah. Now, to fast forward to getting introduced to Ironmans and competing in that, you know, I myself have never competed, so I'm just going to get that out there. But I would imagine that the training is pretty intense. So talk about one, raising kids, having a home, having a husband, and still finding time to train. And then I think the second part to that is that element of competition, right? Because competing against others is good, but it can be unhealthy. Competing against yourself can be, a bit more healthy. So talk about, finding that competitive nature within.
Yeah, I mean, I put in the work and I put in
Yeah.
the time with anything that I do. I just that's who I am. And somebody, I don't know where this quote is from, but the gist is people do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Like what's a priority to them, they'll make
Yep.
time for. And
Yeah.
so as we were talking before we jumped on, I suck at packing. I'm going to forget everything. Even though I've had plenty of time, it's just not this massive in my brain. It's just not this massive priority. And somehow I always get by. But with fitness, it's always been, luckily I was very lucky and blessed with the ability to always have a very good relationship with food and
Yeah.
fitness. So as a cheerleader and a gymnast, eating disorders just for young women in general, I feel like more women had one than not, but I was one of the lucky ones where I could compete, but it was all in a healthy space, and I never went down these rabbit holes of unhealthy behavior with fitness, which some people look at Ironman and they're like totally unhealthy, like you're obsessed with working out. Well, it is very time consuming, but it's for this purpose of a goal.
Right.
And for me, it was really getting me out and finding myself, because when I stopped working and I stayed home and I was, teaching Pilates a couple days, but not a big deal. I needed something for me.
Yeah.
And I had been, really successful in the work space. I was in retail managing, stores, and my stores were always number one with
Mm.
like top selling, whatever contest they gave me, I just excelled at.
Yeah.
And so I had that drive, and I was just like sitting around, and I just felt really lost as a new mom. I,
Mm.
I was just like, and my husband regrets this to this day, but he was like, well, you don't have any hobbies. You need a hobby. Oh, I found a hobby. I found a hobby. And so, I mean, it was really kind of easy for me to fall in line with finding something and prioritizing it, because it's what my soul needed. And
Yeah.
so I devoted the time to it. And um of course it was not easy all of the time. I mean, there's always sacrifices with anything that's
Yep.
worthwhile. And so there were sacrifices, and half of the time I would come home and the downside would be I would be wiped out from, a 4-hour ride up in the mountains, and then I was really no good for the rest of the day with my kids. So there's always a trade-off of, mom, let's go to this. And I'm like, I just want to lay here for 10 more minutes. I'm so tired. But I found the time, and it was really something that was another pivotal point in my journey to get me to where I am today. But
Yeah.
I didn't see it at the time. At the time, I just was like, oh, this is what I like to do. And I don't love competing, honestly. Every time I would go to the starting line of an Ironman and I would have to put on my wetsuit, and I would be like, I would give $1 million for anyone to take my place. But then, of course, when you're finished, then it's like, oh, this was so amazing. I'm so glad I did it. But that morning it was always, I don't know why I keep choosing to sign up to do this.
Now, so along those lines, there seems to be a great community in the Ironman world of, hey, if you can get plugged in or connect with certain folks, like you can consistently be surrounded by people that are wanting to grow and be better. And so for you, did you find a group like off the bat? Did that take a little while of doing it for a couple of years, but before you found, a group or a good coach that you were working with, or what did that kind of trajectory look like for you?
Yeah, I had applied for this team called Betty Designs. And this was like their second year. So I missed the first year, wasn't familiar with them, but I applied and it was an application. And I think they took maybe 300 triathletes,
Wow.
or it didn't have to be triathletes, but you either had to be kind of a cyclist, a runner, or a triathlete,
Yeah,
uh, more or less. And so I applied and got on the team, which kind of seems funny now, but some of my dear friends I still have came from that team. And
amazing.
of course, we're all online, but that camaraderie was really strong. And so we would, we all had the same outfits and we would meet up at races and it was really critical, I think, to keeping me in the game. And then I just did my own research and I always really shoot high for the best. And so I found one of the top female pro triathletes at the time that was like at the top of her game. And I asked her to coach me, and
Wow.
she said yes. And it was just a really easy, beautiful coaching experience and friendship that came out from of that. And she really helped me get to this place where I was, in the top, always the top 10 at any of these events in my age group, which was a big deal for me. So yeah, it was helpful.
Amazing. Now, as you mentioned, you were also teaching Pilates, kind of in addition to your training. And one thing that you started to notice from, people are taking your classes and just your personal workouts was it was a good workout in regards to, it was getting you active. It was making, certain muscles work that wouldn't normally work, but there was a missing element of kind of the strength training side of things. And so talk a little bit about that for you and why that became a passion project for you to help, other women specifically, gain strength and why that was important.
Well, okay. So this was the next pivotal moment in my life. I had just done the Chattanooga 70.3 Ironman. It was May of 2018. And it was honestly one of my best races. Super hard course, but did great. I think I placed maybe fifth or seventh in my age group and was really happy. Loved the event. When I finished that, oh, I mean, this isn't super uncommon, but after a race of that magnitude, there's always these niggles that pop up
Mm,
afterwards. Like, you're really sore, but an area is more sore than another. So I started like I just had this hamstring issue. And I was like, cool, well, I know this is kind of par for the course. So I rested a little bit for a couple weeks, but it just wasn't really going away. So I started going to physical therapy and I guess the like if I had to look at that period of time, I would be like, well, duh, you weren't strength training. I was kind of doing some body weight stuff, but
yeah.
fitting in an Ironman schedule, it was just the first thing that I let go. I was just like, I don't have time for this. I got to get on my bike and I got to, and so I didn't prioritize it into my week. And long story short, I ended up spending months of having this debilitating knee pain. It was hamstring, and then it was knee, and then it was inner knee, and then it was back of the knee.
Mm,
And come to find out, months later, I went in, had multiple MRIs, misdiagnosed, and then finally went to this hospital for special surgery, which is pretty much in New York City. It's the best one in at least the United States, or one of the top ones in the United States. And they did their own MRI, and the surgeon was like, you had to kind of qualify. Like if you were
mm,
really messed up, then
yeah.
this specific surgeon would see you. Otherwise, he wasn't taking everyone. They called me the next day. They're like, Hailey, you got to get in here. I was like, I knew something was
Yeah,
wrong.
right.
No, so anyways, I ended up having major knee surgery. And I knew I was going to be non-weight bearing for 6 weeks. And for someone who had 6 months ago done this, the best race of their life and an Ironman, to be like, okay, well, you'll pretty much be bedridden for 6 weeks. Like you can hobble around on crutches, but you can't even tap your toe down on this one side, was super devastating. And so again, I was like, all right, well, I could binge watch every Netflix show that I haven't had time for and all of these movies, or I had started to put the pieces of the puzzle together and I had been teaching Pilates and I was like, something is just not right here. Like these women are paying a lot of money a month. This is not a diss on Pilates. I still have all of the equipment downstairs in my home gym.
Yeah.
But I was just like, nobody can, push more than maybe 8 pounds over their head, and nobody can do a proper push-up. What are we missing here?
Mm,
So that kind of fused into my injury and my journey. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to get a personal training certification.
yep.
That's what I'm going to do. And so when I had surgery, like literally as soon as I was off drugs, 3 days later, I got on and I got certified as a personal trainer. It was supposed to take like, I don't know, 4 months. I did it in 6 weeks. I was like, I've got nothing to do. My family would come in. I was like, I don't want to eat. I don't want to eat. I'm doing my, whatever. And then I just went down this rabbit hole of education from that point on. And I literally would not have my business today had that not happened. I think I would have stayed in the Ironman world and just kind of, you know, still be doing races, which is amazing, but I clearly had other plans and I made the shift. I devoted all of my free time and energy. And then, of course, after 6 weeks, you think you can just, I remember going into my surgeon and I was like, okay, well, you guys can keep these crutches. I don't need them. And they were like, you can't just walk out of here. I was like, what do you mean? And then I started to walk holding on to, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even, my leg was like shaking
Yep.
because it had completely atrophied after 6 weeks of nothing.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of rebuilding. And so I spent a long time after I got my certification being like, okay, who are the best of the best in the field? And I'm really good at just reaching out and saying, hey, do you have a course? Or, can I pay you for your time? Or find a book that they wrote or podcast they were on and just really be a sponge and soak up all of this information. So that's kind of what got me to that point.
I love it. Now, for you, simultaneously in this season of life, you're going through this change, but you had also gone through a geographic change of living in Colorado to living on the East Coast for your husband's job. So, talk a little bit about making that move, just as a family, being in a new spot, new location, but then also you end up, through your husband's job, having a very important conversation about what you might be able to do in regards to posting your workouts and how that can almost create a business.
Well, so we had moved out in 2017. Maybe he had moved out in 2016 to work for a major player in the game, Gary Vaynerchuk, which most people are familiar with Gary V. And he was going to be Gary's first chief creative officer for VaynerMedia. So he had been out there a year before, and I was like, you've got to make sure that this gig is going to work before I'm schlepping everyone out. Because now my kids are at these harder adolescent years that it's not just easy to move them around.
Yep.
And so we decided and we ended up moving to New Jersey. And no hate to the New Jersey crowd. I've got plenty of friends there now, but it was not my vibe
Yeah.
at all. Like I drove into Newark from New York and I cried. And my husband's like, "Are you going to talk? Do you like any of these towns?" And I was like, "There's no bike lanes. Like where am I going to ride my bike? I'm going to get killed."
Yeah.
And so we were there for 3 years and it was a really great opportunity for my kids. I actually really liked the proximity to the city and everything that you can do back east. But I'm a Colorado gal and I could not wait to get back here. So we had rented our house and when 2020, when everything shut down, our renters were like, "Oh, we're bouncing." So we were like, "Well, we got to sell the house or we got to move back." And I'm like, "Please, let's move back.
Yeah.
Please." I'm moving back, even if it's just by myself. So we ended up moving back. here to Colorado. But during that time, we moved in June, and from March, when everything shut down, I had been teaching Pilates and doing these fusion TRX Pilates classes. And all my clients were like, what do we do? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to start posting TRX workouts because I'm not, getting on a call with each of you. I'll just post these and you guys can follow along.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And I'd always wanted to kind of get more into, I never had a fitness app was never on my radar at all. I was just wanted to have kind of a social media presence.
Yeah.
And so I think at first I like renamed my Instagram that was just my name to like Pilates Try Girl because I was like doing triathlon. It's so embarrassing now. But it's part of the journey.
Absolutely.
So so we have that. And I just started and everyone was shut down. So my husband wasn't working. And so he was just filming me every day and showing me like I'd started to get into strength training by then. I'd been into it for about 6 months. And so I had a little bit of equipment at my house, but like not much. Dumbbells, pretty much. I had one barbell and a trap bar and a couple plates. That's it.
Yeah.
And I was like, putting the barbell on my kitchen counter and then like going underneath it because I didn't have a squat rack and just figuring it out, but
Yeah.
posting this. And my Instagram honestly like blew up, but it blew up with like a lot of women from Argentina and like Brazil.
Yeah.
And so then I was spending all day Google translating. Like, I don't know what you guys, they're sending me these messages. And honestly, it was a really good time to get an initial following. So I think I got like 20,000 followers right off pretty fast within a
Yeah.
couple months from that, but they weren't you know, they were probably in the age group, maybe. I don't know. I hadn't really specified yet, but they weren't really interested in buying anything. So I showed like this decent following at first, but I was like, well, I really want people that are interested in my brand and what
Yeah.
I'm going to do moving forward. And so I started tailoring it more. And honestly, like TRX reached out to me at the time and they were like, we're starting this online app and do you want to be a trainer? And I was kind of like, okay, it was exciting because it was
Yeah.
kind of, at the time a big deal. I wasn't doing anything else. But I was like, if I go down this road, I'm a paid trainer for an hour class. Do I really want to do this? And I like TRX, but I was like, I want more of it. I want to move more to the strength training. I don't want to be pigeonholed into this TRX
Yeah.
area. And so I politely turned them down, and then I just started doing. By this time, I had kind of moved back to Colorado, and then I had an unfinished basement, and I started just filming. I mean, I look back at those videos, and I'm so embarrassed because it's just, I mean, it's horrible. It's like bad lighting. It's unfinished. I have like 5 pieces of equipment, but it all started there. And then I was still
Yeah.
doing a lot of TRX outside in my backyard, and kind of bridging off of that. Meanwhile, this is the biggest pivoting point, the next big pivoting point. I am taking these continuing educations with this strength and conditioning coach in Australia at the time who ended up becoming a business partner on a lot of my courses. Um, and he was like the best instructor I'd ever had in my whole life. And by this time, I had taken multiple ongoing continuing education courses.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, these ones are really above the bar.
Yeah.
And so I'm really good at asking for things. And so I just reached out and I was like, hey, would you want to? I'm starting this fitness app. And at the time I was like, I'm going to launch 2 TRX courses.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to see where it goes. But what if we put this, like, I was doing at the time this fat loss fundamentals course that he had.
Mm.
And I was like, well, what if we took this made for trainers, and we just dumbed it down and did it for Gen Pop? Because by this time, this was the really critical moment is, you know, I didn't really have a specialty. I knew I wanted to work predominantly with women.
Yep.
I'd kind of just been doing all sorts of little things. But by this point, I was like, man, I wanted to work with women 40 plus, mainly because I was 41 at the time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, the 20-year-olds are not going to vibe with me at all. Like I'm the mom.
Yeah.
So I just want to work with people where they're not like, that lady's old. I'm going to focus on the 40 plus crowd. But then I also started to enter this like perimenopause phase, and it was just started getting a lot like it was very early days in 2021, early 2022, where people were even talking about menopause and perimenopause.
Yeah.
But I kind of found this niche and I was like, okay, the women that I was training, they were kind of in this either postmenopausal or around that period, late 40s, and things were changing and we needed to figure out why. And what was like this fat loss advice? What do we do? Because, any of your Instagram feed, I just went on my Facebook, one of my Facebook groups this morning, and somebody was like, my whole Instagram feed is like detox cleanses and these super pills and these and they were like, "Well, I just don't know which ones are right." And I'm like, "None of them." Like if it's an infomercial, chances are none of them are right. And if
Yeah.
they're selling you a product, then they have an agenda. So I was just like, how do I create a course that really just brings in the science? And at this time, evidence-based wasn't this big thing, but I was just like, I want to take exactly the science and then I want to break it down for the average female at this phase in life. And
Yeah.
this is what I want to teach. I had no clue where it was going to go. There were 50 people in the first course, and 20 of those were my friends or clients that I gave a massive discount to.
Yep.
Because I was like, I just need people in the course because I know if the course does well, which I knew that it would, that then they would tell other people that would tell other people. But at the time, I had maybe 50,000 people, followers on Instagram, which doesn't mean anything, but it definitely, the more followers you have, you get doors open a lot easier.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm like, okay, if I go down this road, I want to be very specific about this niche of women that I'm working with. I don't care about the number of followers. I want the number of right followers for me that are actually interested. I don't care, like I don't sell to men, so I don't need any male followers. I mean, of course I have some, but my percentage is like 5%, maybe 3%. So I was very specific about that. And that kind of led me into like that was the slow build of getting me into my own fitness app that literally I never had any plan to do.
So I want to highlight a couple things that you mentioned there and dig in a little bit deeper. So the first one was when you were talking about, the beginning of the videos, and it wasn't glamorous. I look back and I say, why the heck did I even post it, right? All those different things. But I think anyone that has started something and given it a long enough runway looks back and feels that way.
Oh,
And I think for so many people, that fear of this isn't very good right now prevents them from even beginning the journey. But anyone that's begun the journey and has seen it through for to a certain level can look back and say, but I did the best I could at the time that I did it, right? Like that
yep.
was the best that Hailey could have done at that moment in time. Now, it doesn't mean it's the best she's ever going to do, right? But at that moment in time, it was the best you were capable of. And then by doing it, you got better. So, give a word of encouragement to someone that's listening that's been thinking about starting something, right? It could be their own business, it could be something completely unrelated to fitness, or it could be just working out. And they say, gosh, I don't even know if I could do a push-up. I'm not going to go to the gym. And it's like, but that's the perfect spot to start. So that way, 5 years, 10 years from now, you can look back and go, can you remember when I couldn't even do a push-up and now I'm doing this? So, a word of encouragement to people listening right now.
Yeah, I would say you absolutely just have to start. And that sounds so simple, and it is. But I had the privilege of meeting Gary Vaynerchuk in person, who is very impactful and significant, and I mean, he's his own personality, and if you know him, you know him. And I met him, well, I had met him once in New York when my husband was working for him, but then the first time I really got to have a conversation with him was at the Cannes advertising. I can't even remember what is it called, but it's like it's like international awards for advertising. Cannes
Okay.
Lions, that's what it's called. And so I got to meet Gary there, and he was, I just raced Ironman, and he was asking all about it. I think it was my first one that I'd done, or maybe the second one. anyways, and he was just like, cool. And I remember somebody that was on his team was asking me about, my Instagram. And I was like, well, I kind of want to do my Instagram. And they were like, well, okay, let's look at it. I'll follow you. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing on there. And, I mean, literally I had like nothing on there. And I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing. I should have never told him that I wanted to do this. But I got a lot of encouragement and just wise words from very limited interactions with Gary on that trip. And I just obviously had been following him, and I was just like, the overarching theme was just like, you got to start if you really
Yeah.
want to do something, but you also have to stick with it and know that it's going to suck for a really long time.
Yeah.
For a while, you're going to like, you have to enjoy the process because no one's buying it first, no one's following it first,
Yeah.
no one cares about you at first, and you really have to just dive in and do it if it's something that you really want. And it's the same for fitness. All of these women that come in and they're just like, well, I can't do that. Well, not now, but my journey doesn't have to look like your journey. And your journey is just to start and to be healthy and have an independent life when you're 90.
Yeah.
It's not to be super jacked and, get as thin as possible or, whatever, all of those things that women think at this stage of life. It is get in there, get the job done, and really just you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself to owe to your family of the kids that are going to have to be taking care of you. To
Yeah.
really devote some of that time to you if we're looking at it in the strength training lens of follow through and really starting as a beginner. I think it's the best thing in the world to be a beginner, at least in the weights room. I'm like, you guys get newbie gains. I
Yeah.
don't get those anymore. I'm like squeaking by, and my deadlift, like I'm never, never say never, but most of the time, like more than likely, I'm not going to hit another PR on my deadlift.
Yep.
I'm okay with that. But those first 18 months, whenever I take on a new client, it's so fun to just like watch them soar and do things that they never thought that they could ever do. And they just needed a path. They just needed somebody to show them what to do and the consistency of showing up. Same thing in business.
Yeah. Now, to that point, the pro to your point of someone doing something new is if you do see quick results, it can be very motivating. However, we all know there's a reversion, right? Whether it's in business, it's in working out, like you could see something happen really quickly, but then all of a sudden it reverts back for a period of time, or it plateaus for a period of time. And that oftentimes can be demoralizing or frustrating, right? Of like, dang it, I'm doing all the right things, but I'm not seeing the results that I once was seeing. So now you're coaching people, right? And I'm sure you get this frequently of like,
Oh yeah.
Hailey, I know you said this was going to happen, but it's happening. And now I don't know how to emotionally, work through it. So what are some things that you do as a coach to help people progress through those periods of, plateau or reversion while they're still in process of getting to the ultimate goal or making progress?
Well, I would say the biggest thing for me working with women specifically is 98% of women want fat loss,
Hmm,
and everyone wants it quick. And we live in a quick world where we can get anything quick,
that's right.
except for fat loss. And you can get quick fat loss, but it comes at a massive cost of hemorrhaging muscle tissue, which at this stage of life is completely not the direction
Hmm,
that we want to be going. So that is the biggest thing. In the weights room, yes, I mean putting on muscle is really slow, but I try to teach people, I'm like, you are in this for a long haul. This is not a training block. This isn't even like training for a race and then the race is done and you're never done. You're never getting off this train. Ideally, if you
yeah.
want to have this really rich, strong life, you've got to stick on the train and there's no end to it. So it is just like consistently and taking a step back and being like, okay, well, so maybe if you don't see this muscle definition do you want? What are the personal records, the PRs that you're setting in the gym?
Yeah.
Like look at it another way. Were you able to keep up with your grandkids better today? Huge win. Way
Yeah.
more than the body composition, you know, side of it,
Yes.
the visual side of it. But that's not to downplay that that's important as well, because while I think the women's space has been really good at changing the conversation from thin is in to, strong over skinny, and really getting people to want women to want to build muscle and maintain muscle. There's still a heck of a lot of women that come every single day and they're like, yeah, cool, but I also have 40 pounds to lose and I want to be comfortable in my skin.
Yeah.
And so that is really the motivation there. From the fat loss side, there is so much in the learning phase of being able to, figure out what works for you and being consistent with the process. Because
Yeah.
the majority of the time, most of us are overeating from what I see. And uh that like and then that leads to a little bit of weight gain. But if we look at it, I'm like, well, how long did it take you to gain the 30 pounds? You can't expect to lose that in 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And there's going to be a heck of a lot of errors there if you aren't familiar with what you're putting into your mouth. And a lot of that comes with education of looking at and maybe doing some calorie counting for a while, which I don't recommend long term, but as an educational tool, it's invaluable because most of us, I mean, all the time in these groups that I run, somebody's like, wait, I have to count the olive oil that I drizzled on my homemade pizza? That was like 300 calories. Yep,
Yeah.
it was. But now you know, which before it's like, I mean, I'm not eating that much, but I'm gaining weight. Okay, well, let's break that down and let's really look at what you are eating and educate you on what that plate should look like at this phase of life.
Yep.
And where do we go with that with good strength training programs? So, so that if you are wanting to lose weight, that you're doing it in a safe and modest way. But, I have had the privilege of training some very well-known celebrities, and one of them came to me and was like, okay, yeah, I want a little bit of fat loss. And I said, I'm going to just lay it out here straight. If you're looking for a quick fix, I'm not your gal.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have 900 places that you can go. But this is how I approach it. And it's the only way I feel comfortable approaching it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not going to destroy your metabolism and hemorrhage muscle for the sake of getting results really fast. So let me be very clear with my expectations and with what I can bring to the table. And luckily they've stayed with me and we've had a great relationship. But it really you have to have this long mindset, because if you want to give up after the first couple weeks or the all or nothing where you're like, well, I was on and I did so amazing and I was losing a little bit of weight, but then I totally screwed it up on this cruise I went. So like, what's the point? I'll do it again in a couple months. No, 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 no. Like get your mindset back on, and you get back on the train, and you're going to fall off and you get back on. You fall off, you get back on. But really, that's how it has to be with fitness and nutrition, to where you can really live this good lifestyle lean, is what I call it,
Yeah.
lifestyle of not always having to feel like you have to be cutting calories and not being able to eat things. Like it's not about restriction at all. It's about really an enriching life of health and longevity. And sometimes, a lot of times body composition comes along for the ride with that, which
Yeah.
is a bonus.
Yeah. Now, you've really dialed into the specific group that you want to work with. And from a business standpoint, I think that can be one of the hardest things when you're starting a business, because you go, well, I know I could help everyone, right? I mean, the reality, well, 99.9% of people need some type of assistance with working out or nutrition, right? That's just the reality of it. So you say, well, I can help everyone, but to your point, I may not connect best with everyone. And so I think for a lot of people, a difficult element of that could be, well, all of a sudden I'm turning away people, right? Or I'm, almost strategically not going after this group of people. And when you're first starting a business, it's like, well, I just need people to work with. So talk about that, progression for you of, all right, I now know that, hey, 40 plus women is really who I'm, wanting to target and work with. And then two, being okay with saying no to certain things that aren't, specific or pertinent to that group.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky to really dial in exactly what I wanted. And at the time, now there's thousands, thousands and thousands of women coming into the space that I mean that everyone is kind of wanting this peri and postmenopause group because it's kind of the hot thing right now. And I just was like, I want to train people that are my age,
Yeah.
as I explained. So that I think it's the again, I'm killing the quotes, but like if you're something to everyone, then you're if you want to try to be something for everyone, then you're nothing to you end up
Yeah.
being nothing to anyone.
Yeah.
And so I was very specific that this is and I remember my business partner at the time was like, well, if we're only training females, then we're missing out on half the population. I'm like, they have plenty of people to go to.
Yep.
And I want to train dudes. Like, I don't know how to train dudes. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so really like dialing into that, I would say my next big pivotal point is coming, cliffhanger, of once I dialed into this and then I connected with Dr. Stacy Sims through an Instagram live, who's kind of one of the pioneer in the, exercise physiologist in the female menopausal and perimenopausal space. And I had asked her to do an Instagram live with me, and we just had like a great vibe. Great, got off, asked her again the next year, which was, I think, 2022. Great, got off, asked her again in 2023. And at that time, I was like, my business had started to pick up, but I was still like in the small lane. I had a couple thousand, maybe people on my app
Yeah.
total. And those were like free users too. Those were not just like everyone was paid. That's just somebody who had downloaded my app.
Yeah.
And at the end of 2023, after I'd had this third Instagram live with Stacy, Stacy was blowing up and I was getting asked, well, what programs, do you have that Stacy Sim has the recommendations that Stacy Sims would have? And I was like, well, I'm going to ask her if she wants to do one. And so I sent this email. It sat in my inbox for probably 3 weeks. And my husband was like, if I have to hear about you, talk about this email, like send it or delete it,
Yeah.
but stop talking about it. And I was like,
Mm.
okay. So I just asked for this email and hit send. And I was like, well, it's done. So I try to hit send when I've sat on something and I'm like scared to see like, are they going to say yes? Are they going to say no? I just hit send before I can change my mind. And then I'm like, well, it's out there. They either say yes or they say no.
Yeah.
And I just asked her, I said, I get asked all the time, I'm sure you do too. I have this platform. This is what I can bring to you. I have the platform, I have the exercises, my husband's in branding and advertising, so we can do all of that. Would you be interested? And it was crickets for a few weeks. And then I got an email back and she's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And I was like, okay, well, I think I'm actually going to be in Australia in January. This was in October. And maybe I'll just hop over to New Zealand while I'm on the other side of the world and meet you in person. And she's like, yeah, come stay at my house. And I was blown away because I was like, what if I was a psycho? I don't know if I would reciprocate the same hospitality of saying, I don't know this person, but I'm going to invite her to my house. Like it could go one of two ways. And I was so thankful of that experience because then it ended up being like when we met, I was like, oh, this is totally my person and she's amazing. But that once I launched that program, I'm probably jumping ahead of a lot of your questions, but once I launched that program with her last March in 2024, my world, like it launched me into another stratosphere. I mean, it like overnight success, thousands of people downloading my app. Like I think the first day we sold 700 workout plans and I was not equipped. I mean, it was like I was a team of two.
Yeah.
Me, my husband, who's super part-time, that was just doing like the emails and the graphic design and helping a little bit with the app. And then my now 21-year-old daughter that was like working like 10 hours a week, 5 hours a week for me. And then overnight, I was just like, well, I'm screwed. 500 emails, the app's not working. What about this? What about, and I was just like, I don't know. Like I literally just jumped off the cliff. And while this is amazing, like I'm sinking, like
Yeah.
I'm sinking and I literally like night and day. until I could bring somebody on. Luckily, one of my business partners now was like available and kind of in between jobs and had a specialty in tech and was able to help me. But I was just like, I don't know what to do. So that was probably the biggest, that was for sure all of these little points.
Yeah.
But to get me from where I was to where I am in the last 16 months has been massive growth. But I'm going to say that not all of that has been good at all.
Yeah.
There have been tons of sleepless nights and, breakdowns and confrontation. And as you expand, there's this whole other world of negativity that can kind of come.
Hmm.
And that's part of the process, but a really hard process for me to kind of have to deal with
Yeah.
because it just was. I'm just feel like everyone's nice and everyone has your best interest at heart. And in business, the more my business mentors have been like, Hailey, you gotta set some boundaries because this all is part of the process. But anyways, that has been the most pivotal moment that I've had that now I can look back at these other steps and be like, oh, it got me here. Oh, this one got me here, and then this one got me here. And I think the biggest theme is like, I'm really good at asking
Yeah.
because I don't want to, but I'm really good at asking and I'm a really good business partner because I will carry a lot of the time the lion's share of the load to have these massive experts align with me.
Yeah.
And I make it really easy for them because I'm like, cool, I'll take care of all of the back office stuff and the sales and the emails and this and that. All you have to do is really have your name on it and, come and answer some questions once a month or whatever. And so it's been this great, I don't know. I guess I had no idea. I never thought I would own my own business. I never had a desire to. I was really good at making money for other people, but
And here we are running a business.
there we are.
So for you, and you've mentioned a couple different partners, mentors, that you've worked with. And I think that can be a great opportunity. And it can also be the divorce of a business, right? And you have to deal with, breakups and separations. And for so many people, you hear people go, gosh, I would never go into business with someone else, just run it your way. And yeah, maybe it doesn't grow to as much, but at least you're doing it the way you want to do it. And then you have other people, or, maybe examples like you have, where if it's a very strategic partnership, it can actually be one of the best things that's ever happened to your business. So talk a little bit about that for you on kind of that balancing act of knowing who you're going into business with and making sure it's a great fit. And once again, obviously some of the great things that can come from it.
Yeah, I go back and forth because the more collaborations and this is different than like owning a business with someone.
Yeah.
Is these are collaborations that we kind of all have our own businesses, but we're just coming together for a specific cause. But
Yep.
with that, you get tremendous growth if they're the right people.
Yeah.
Growth you could not have gotten on your own. But then you're also kind of a slave to um what people like you can't it's hard to have your own identity
Right.
because they're like, well, this person says this, so this is what, and I'm like, well, actually, I think that there's, this is my view, and
Yeah.
this is like this could be slightly different than any of these other collaborators, but it's really hard to have your own voice there too. And I would say, yeah, it's tricky because there's no way of getting out of having really hard conversations
Yep.
with collaborators or business partners or people that you're like, if you're going to separate ways with somebody, there's a lot of changes that are just part of the process, but they suck.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just is what it is. But I would say always stay true to what your vision and your brand is. And regardless of any collaborations or business partners that you bring on, that number one, you're protecting yourself. I've had to learn a lot of hard lessons. And number two, that you stay true to what you want. Because voices can be really loud and um I don't have a super bold personality as far as like cutthroat,
Yeah.
but you kind of have to be. You have to be able to set a very firm boundary and say, okay, this is what I'll negotiate on, and these are the things that are absolutely non-negotiables. These are deal breakers for me.
Yeah.
And those calls are really hard, but if you go against them or you delay them, I'm going to throw another quote out, but then now it's going to, the longer you're on the wrong train, the more expensive it is to get off.
Yep.
So, it never does you any good or your business any good to avoid those.
Yep.
They're going to come around whether you like it or not. And again, it's it's hard to draw a line in the sand. It was hard for me. It's not hard for everyone. It was hard for me because I never had to do it. And I'm all just like, oh, whatever, okay, And it didn't, you can't.
Yep.
So it's
No,
hard.
that's good. Well, I know you have things to get done, but kind of last question I have for you today, is so we went from the world of competing ourselves to finding passion in working out to now finding passion in helping others. Over the years, maybe the desire or the thing that's making you competitive has changed, but there's still that, desire to do well and help other people. And so for you right now in this season and as you're coaching people, what makes you excited? What gets you, to just get up every morning and, have passion for this new opportunity that is continuing to grow and expand for you?
Well, you have to separate the non-fun business stuff
Yeah.
of budgets and hard calls and everything that we just talked about. And because there's been plenty of times where I'm like, I'm freaking out. Like I'm done. I'm leaving. Like this isn't worth it at all. And then, I'll get every day I get DMs that I'm tagged on and emails and messages in my groups of someone that this has literally changed the trajectory of their life
Yeah.
with just fitness, accountability, and whatever I'm doing to add some motivation to the mix, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but those are so much more powerful than even these incredible experiences I've had with training people that anyone would literally die to work with. That's not even like the more exciting for me is really giving these women a chance to be like, y'all can do it. You just need a good plan and you need a community that has the same goals and you need that community to be positive and uplifting.
Yep.
And I can provide the education alongside, definitely not a one-man show, alongside of these experts. I'm never going to have a PhD. I'm never going to be a medical physician, but my superpower is connecting really well with the people that do. And
Yeah.
so if I don't have the answer, I'm like, guess what? I'll call who does because I know who does. And bringing my audience these incredible experts to be able to add richness and diversity and variety to this whole plan of health and fitness. Um, did I answer the question?
Nailed it.
This is the very menopause brain. I'm like, what was I talking about? What were we just talking about? So anyhow, that would be the absolute joy and what I would get up to doing it. It really doesn't come down to, the financial gain. All of those things are like bonuses, whatever. But the true passion for me is like, man, these women are going to be around, and hopefully they're around with a good quality of life for decades to come. And that matters more than anything else. So that would be my end piece, I guess.
I love it. Well, Hailey, I want to say thanks so much for hopping on, sharing your journey and all the amazing moments that have led to here. And excited to do this again in 3 years when the business has tripled in size or more. And we'll be talking about all the new things you're doing.
Sounds good. We'll do it.